Good evening. All set to go? Okay. Uh, Good evening and welcome. It's nice to see everyone here. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to talk about accepting things as they are. And I'll start by saying a little bit about what acceptance is and what it isn't. And then I'll tell you a story about something that happened to me recently that's related to this topic. Acceptance is not a passive activity. It's not, oh well, there's nothing I can do. It means turning towards what's happening in your life and seeing it clearly for what it is, acknowledging it, feeling it, and feeling it with all your senses. No denial, no distraction, no avoidance, no resistance. This is how it is. It's not some other way. It's fine to try to make things better. You know, if you have money problems, it's fine to cut your expenses, have a budget. If you're having health problems, it's fine to exercise more, change your diet. But it's from a position of clearly seeing how things are. So a few weeks ago, I got a notification that the batteries in my AirPod were low and running out. Probably everybody knows what those are, but they're little devices that help you keep track of your car keys. I'm not a very tech person, so first time I've ever had any AirPods. So anyway, I drove up to Fred Meyer, bought some new batteries, came home, went online, looked to see, how do you change batteries in an AirPod, watched a little video, and I tried to get the thing open. I couldn't get it open. I tried several times, watched the video a couple more times, could not get them open. So I thought, well, I'll go to the Apple store. They're bound to be able to, City Mac right down the street. They're bound to be able to open these things. So I drove down there and I waited in line. I handed the AirPod to the guy at the counter and he couldn't open it. And that actually made me feel a little bit better. It's just not just me. And he took it back to the tech in the back room, and the tech couldn't open it either. So they suggested that I go to a watch repair shop because they might have a tool that would get the thing open. So I drove back to Fred Meyer because I knew they sold watches and they had a little watch repair counter. And then when I got there, I found that they had closed that counter down and it was no longer there. So the woman I talked to said she knew a battery shop not too far away and they would probably have a tool. So I got in my car, I started, and she gave me directions. And by this time, I was getting pretty annoyed. Starting to a little internal dialogue. This is taking a lot longer than I thought. This shouldn't be happening. This is a real pain in the ass, etc., etc. And in my reading for this topic, what I was doing is referred to as spinning out. So I was starting to spin out, getting tired of all this extra steps I didn't think I should have to take. So I get to the battery store, and it's a store with big batteries, like car batteries, batteries for houses if you lose your power, So they had nothing that would help me. But the guy behind the counter was pretty knowledgeable, and he looked at them and he said, these things are broken. They're supposed to, the springs are supposed to, you push down and the thing, it'll pop open. And I had two of them. Neither one of them was working. So he said, you've got to buy new AirPods. So now we're talking about more money than I had expected. I thought, batteries are a lot cheaper than new AirPods. So I drove back to Fred Meyer so I could get a refund on my batteries and buy new AirPods. And I got to the stoplight, and I was sitting there, and I just asked myself, what's happening right now? Well, nothing. I'm sitting in my car at a red light, period. That's it. And I realized, by then my internal dialogue had stopped, and I realized, I'm just driving to Fred Meyer. I'm just going to buy some AirPods. And all that other stuff, I don't like this. This is taking too long, extra. And, made the whole thing a lot less enjoyable. So, yes, the errand took a lot longer than I thought, and yes, it would cost more money than I thought of, two new AirPods for $60 instead of, $12 for batteries. But that's it. Everything else, I don't like this shouldn't be happening, this is a pain in the ass, et cetera, all extra, all added here. And it made, it was kind of a nice realization that, wow, I've really made this errand a lot worse than it needed to be. And so when it came time to pick a topic for tonight's talk, I thought I could use a brush up on Buddhist teachings about accepting things as they are. And as it turns out, there's quite a bit of material on this topic. It's been a problem for human beings for a long, long, long time. So I have material from the time of the Buddha. I have something from 6th century China. I have something from 12th century Japan. I have quite a few comments made by contemporary teachers in all traditions, Zen and Tibetan and others. And of course, we're all familiar with William Shakespeare line from Hamlet, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. So it's not just Buddhists that have trouble with this situation. And I want to say it's not just accepting difficult things. It's also, it's also a problem when something really great is happening, but it's not going to last forever. And then you want to cling to it and you don't want it to end. And that's the same problem, So I'm really talking about both things. So I'll start out by mentioning some of Norman Fisher's thoughts on suffering. And most of you know this. Norman is the founder of the Everyday Zen Foundation in California, former abbot of the San Francisco Zen Center, and lucky for Red Cedar, the founding teacher for Red Cedar Zen. And here's what he says. The most astonishing fact of human life is that most of us think that it's possible to minimize and even eliminate suffering. We actually think this, which is one reason why it's so difficult for us when we are suffering. We think, this shouldn't be this way, or I'm going to get rid of this somehow. It's incredible that we should think such a thing, but isn't it true? I mean, I do that all the time. I think, any one of us in this room could come up with an endless number of, things that could happen in one day, just little things that you could call suffering. If you're depressed, or if you're anxious, or if you're confused or stressed, or having a physical pain like a headache or flu or something like that, or money problems or relationship problems, or being stuck in traffic. I mean, there's just an endless variety, wishing the weather was different. And then there are bigger problems like death or serious illness among our loved ones. And then there are the big problems in the world, war, poverty, injustice, natural disasters. Even if these problems aren't affecting us directly, I think they weigh on us, just knowing that in many places in the world there's a lot of trouble going on. So, as I said earlier, Buddhist teachings are full of comments about accepting things as they are. And I'll start with a little bit on the Four Noble Truths. This was the first thing the Buddha taught. Suffering exists in the world. Difficult things happen to all of us in the course of a lifetime. And they differentiate, there's a differentiation, there's pain, when difficult things happen, and then it becomes suffering when the second noble truth happens, which is that we resist what we don't want, or we cling to what we do want. That converts pain into suffering. And there's a path to end suffering. That's noble truth number 3. And the fourth is the actual path, the Eightfold Noble Path, which is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And rather than talk about all 8 steps, I'm only going to talk about right view in this talk. And this first step on the Eightfold Path encourages us to notice our suffering. And rather than try to avoid it or get rid of it or distract ourselves from it, look inside yourself to see what might be contributing to it. You know, our words, our actions, our beliefs about ourselves or about other people or about how life should be. You know, with the example I gave you at the beginning, my belief, you know, that this should be a short errand and, you know, it should go a certain way. And if it doesn't go that way, then I'm not happy. You know, that was a big contributor to, and this is just a trivial example, but I use it because our lives are just full of trivial examples, you know, little things every day that can annoy us if we don't pay attention. So now I'll give you a few brief quotes from various teachers about suffering and acceptance. And this first one is from Pema Chodron, 90-year-old teacher in the Tibetan tradition. I think many of you are familiar with her. She's a very good writer and speaker. And she says, "The Buddhist teachings direct us to work with what is happening as the path of awakening, rather than treating your life experience as some kind of deviation from what's supposed to be happening. The more difficulties you have, the greater opportunity you have to let them transform you." So she's talking about difficulties are actually an opportunity to try something different, instead of just doing the habitual thing we all do in situations that we run into regularly. Another teacher, Jetsuma Palmo, also an older teacher in her mid-80s who's been practicing in the Tibetan tradition since the 1960s, says the same thing, a little bit differently, but call something an obstacle, it is an obstacle. Call it an opportunity, it is an opportunity. Nothing is extraneous from the spiritual path. And then here's the first part of a poem called Faith in Mind from 6th century Chinese Zen teacher Jianji Sengjian. Attaining the way is not difficult. Just avoid picking and choosing. If you have neither aversion nor desire, you'll thoroughly understand a hair's breadth difference is the gap between heaven and earth. So it's our aversion and our desire that causes so much trouble. And here's a sentence from a podcast called Accepting Life as It Is, the Buddhist Path to Freedom. We cannot be free while we are at war with reality. Every act of resistance binds us tighter to the thing we are resisting. The more we push against what is, the more we become defined by it. I bet all of us can think of examples where that's happened. Resistance just makes a tighter knot. And then the last word from Suzuki Roshi, founder of the San Francisco Zen Center. Accept what is as it is and help it to become its best. So these are good words from a number of teachers. But the teaching that I actually found most useful was from Eihei Dogen. And he's a Japanese priest who lived from 1200 to 1253. And he's considered the founder of Soto Zen. And in a collection of his writings called the Shobogenzo, or the Treasury of the True Dharma Eye, fascicle number 44, he writes, and this is called Flowers in the Sky. He writes, "The time and place that the blue lotus flowers open and spread are in the midst of fire and in the time of fire." And when this was written in 1243, it was a time of great political upheaval and violence in Japan. So a lot of uncertainty, a lot of difficulty. And the blue lotus blooming symbolizes awakened activity, responding with compassion and wisdom. And the fire represents difficult, challenging times. And so I found this image of a blue lotus opening in fire really encouraging. If I'm starting to struggle with something and I can remember the blue lotus opening in fire, it really does actually encourage me to not just fall into my usual habits of how I handle things, to try something different, to really pay attention and come up with the best response I can. And Dogen's teaching is right in line with the five remembrances, which is also a teaching from the time of the Buddha. And this is a teaching that Desiree mentioned a couple weeks ago in her talk. But it's worth repeating because it's such good advice. So here are the five remembrances. I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape ill health. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love is of the nature of change. There is no way to avoid being separated from them. My deeds are my closest companions. I am the beneficiary of my deeds. My deeds are the ground upon which I stand. I think that's exactly what Dogen is saying with the blue lotus in the time of fire. So how you act, what you say and do matters, especially in difficult times. So I will finish this talk with one more story. A couple weeks ago, my wife Carolyn needed to have a medical test, and our favorite insurance company insisted that she get the test in Seattle. We could easily have gotten it in Bellingham, but they wanted us to go to a clinic in Seattle that they run. And they gave her an appointment for 8:15 on a Monday morning. And we decided very quickly, I'm going with her to help with the drive, and we're not going to leave Bellingham at dark 30 and try to get to Seattle on Capitol Hill at 8:15 in the morning and fight all that traffic. So we went down Sunday night. We stayed in a hotel. We got up early, had breakfast in a restaurant, drove to Capitol Hill, got to the clinic. Kellen goes up, checks in at the desk, gave her name and date of birth. And the woman, punches it into the computer. There's a pause, and she kind of looks, and she goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. The technician who was going to give your test today has called in sick. So, we can't do it." So we very quickly, it was just a very quick, "You got to be kidding me." And then both of us switched pretty quickly to, "Oh, well, I guess we'll just drive home. I hope the traffic isn't too bad." And it wasn't, luckily. We got home at 10:30. But this reminded me of, in my reading, I encountered a term that I really liked. I think it was Pema Chodron who recommended when difficult things happen, collaborate with your life. And I thought, that's a good little something to remember. So I think, Carolyn's really better at this stuff than I am. When difficult things happen, she can roll with it much easier than I am. She's been a very good influence on me over the years, and I don't want to be a bad example in front of her. So I think that helped me, make a better transition. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say about accepting things as they are. So thank you very much for listening. And I guess we'll do the chant, and then we can do, okay.